In this episode, we talked to our guest all the way from Montreal, Canada, about communication. He has created a masterful tool to help you be a part of that 1% communicator in the world. And we can't wait for you to hear this conversation with Brenden Kumarasamy. And so before we go, though, subscribe to our podcast, leave us a review, give us a rating. When you do that, it actually helps us to find better guests, better content for you to hear. So without further ado, let's dive in and have a chat with a good friend, Brenden. Brenden, welcome to the show. How are you?
Very good, Ricardo. How about yourself?
Awesome. I'm doing fantastic. It's always good to have someone further up north talking to us out here in the south. So thanks for jumping in all the way from Canada. Well, my audience would love to know about you. And so let's dive right in and talk to us about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, of course. Happy to share, Ricardo. So my name is Brenden Kumarasamy. I'm the founder of MasterTalk. MasterTalk is a YouTube channel I started to help the world master the art of communication and public speaking. And I also have an executive coaching practice where I train execs and entrepreneurs to become top 1% communicators in their industries.
Oh, that's fantastic. So you're a big communication guy. So how did you get to this? Or how did you get to this point? Like, how did this thing started for you? How do you determine that communication is where you want it to be?
Yeah, of course, man. So when I was in university, I used to do these things called case competitions. Think of it like professional sports, but for nerds. So while other guys my age were playing soccer or rugby or baseball or basketball, sports I would never play, I instead did presentations competitively. So for 3 to 4 years, I practiced hundreds of presentations, but I also accidentally got really good at coaching other people on how to speak. And the reason was because as new students were entering that program, we didn't really have a communication coach. So I took on that responsibility and started coaching them myself. And then what happened is at scale, after I graduated from university and I started working as a management consultant at IBM a few months before that job started, I had the idea for MasterTalk because I realized all of the stuff I was teaching the students wasn't available for free online. A lot of the information you share is like not practical, it's not specific, it's not actionable. That's how MasterTalk started.
Oh wow, that's amazing. That's great. And so let's talk about MasterTalk because I know this is your baby, if you may, and you created this. So tell us about this tool. Talk to us a little more about that.
Yeah, for sure. So the tool I'd love to share is what does it take to become a top 1% communicator in your industry? So how do I define that, Ricardo? The way I define that is, let's say you're an IT professional, let's say you're an architect or you're an entrepreneur, put yourself in the room with 100 other people like you. How do you walk away feeling like you're the top communicator in that group of people? And there's 3 parts to that. I would say the first piece is direction. So let's think about this, Ricardo. We have goals for most things in our life: business, career, health, relationships. But how many of us have communication goals? And the answer is almost 0. So if we're supposed to get better at something, if we want to get to the next level, we want to be strong communicators, it starts with strong, specific goals. Whereas most of us, when we think about communication goals, generally sound something like this. I want to start a podcast. I want to speak a lot. And when we have vague goals, we get vague results. So what I'd recommend people do is write down a list of 3 speakers you really admire in your industry. And what is it about them that you admire from a communication perspective? Invest 30 to 45 minutes a week watching their keynotes on YouTube and pay attention not to what they're saying, but how they're saying it to their audiences.
Wow, that's That's deep. So this is your method. This is your tool that you practice on a daily basis. So who this is your entrepreneur, your small business owner. I know anybody could essentially benefit from this, but talk to us about who are the folks you notice um, capitalizing on this opportunity to be that 1% communicator.
Yeah, great question, man. I would say there's three key areas where we've seen people banging on our door and saying, I need to master communication now so that I can get to the next level. So those three categories are generally managers and executives in the corporate world, generally in the IT space, who want to level up because communication is really the only barrier for them to get into the executive suite or to thrive at the executive suite. So you could still be an executive, but be a terrible communicator, and which will prevent you from being a senior vice president or C-suite executive. That's number one. Number two is an entrepreneur who wants to build more than just a business and wants to build a movement. So if you just want to build a business, word of mouth, one-on-one calls could probably get you to 6 figures. But if you want to build 7 or 8 figure businesses, you need to start thinking about your business as a movement. How do I develop a strong raving fan base so that my businesses, my services sell on their own? And a good example of that is Gary Vaynerchuk from VaynerMedia. Gary has built a substantial social media following through the art of communication and distribution, content distribution specifically, but it's because of the way he communicates that he gets deals from top Fortune 500 companies without having to go through an RFP process. They just bang $10 million deal on the table. They just say, you're Gary Vee. We want to work with your organization. And that's why he's the fastest growing marketing agency on the planet. So that's number two, is entrepreneurs who want to build movements, not just businesses, and want to scale long past 6 and want to start hitting the 7 and 8 figure marks. And then the third piece is coaches who want to do something similar to entrepreneurs, but they want to do it when serving their clients. So those are the 3 categories we've seen.
Nice. And how is this obviously you do something very special as you add value to our world, and the question is, how is it different though from some of the alternatives that are out there? I'm sure there are other folks who will say, well, I do that too, but talk to us a little about that. How is it different from everybody else?
Yeah, absolutely, Ben. So the way that we structure the program is very different than most speech coaches in the industry. Because usually if you hire a speech coach, it's generally one-on-one for, let's say, a few $100 an hour for their time, and you spend an hour with them a week for 3 months. So pretty much on the span of 3 months, you blew a few thousands of dollars and you've only practiced for 12 hours, 4 hours a month. So let's say we play that out. Me and you talk for an hour, and I'll see you next week, Ricardo. We spend an hour, see you next week. So your results are pretty flatline. You might get a bit better over time, but you're not practicing enough. So our philosophy is we operate in small groups where we take super strong executives and entrepreneurs who really want to master communication, and we put them in small group calls, 7 to 9 people, and they all coach each other. So of course I'm on the call, I'm the facilitator, but when they're practicing a speech, it's not one person giving them feedback, it's 8, it's 9, it's 7 people. So they get different perspectives and ideas because we mix our entrepreneurs, we mix our coaches, we mix our executives in the same call so they can learn from each other. But then we pair them into accountability groups. So during the week, depending on their availabilities, they meet other people in the group and practice as well. So the average client in our programs gets 3 to 4 hours of practice a week rather than 1 if they want to. So that way they get results in a few weeks rather than a few months.
Nice. That's awesome. And you talk about practice, which begs the other question around sort of talk to me a little bit about some of the things that you actually practice, like some of the practical stuff that you do once we're aligned with your program, etc.
Yeah, for sure. So there's a couple of pieces there. I would say the first one, the easiest drill we run through with clients that you can practice at home, is called the random word exercise. So the random word exercise is where you pick one random word. I'm happy to demonstrate if you want, Ricardo. Lights, chimney, basement, floor, and you give presentations impromptu right away. And what this does is it improves your resiliency as a speaker. So many executives go, I'm scared of meetings, I'm scared to speak up. But if you practice avocado for a minute, when you go back into your meeting where you actually know what you're talking about, those meetings become a joke really, really quickly. So that's the first exercise we do. The second one is question drills. So one challenge we've seen with executives and entrepreneurs is whenever they go into a boardroom and they're selling something or presenting an idea, they get a lot of questions that they don't know the answer to. Hey, Ricardo, did you think about this? Did you think about that? So what we do is we drill executives through hundreds of questions so that every time they walk into a boardroom, they're absolutely bulletproof. And that's the second piece. So why is it that I'm super comfortable in a podcast? It's not because Brenden is smart or unique. It's because Brenden has already answered all of the questions he could possibly get asked hundreds of podcasts ago. So there's nothing that I can be asked that I don't already know the answer to. That's the key. It's preparation. And the third pillar is relationship building. So relationship building is how do you apply all the skills that you learned from taking out of your filler words, your ums, your ahs, speaking with more energy, doing all the right things and applying that to relationship building. So let's say Ricardo has more energy in his presentations now. Now the next piece is, well, are you applying that same amount of energy when you're talking to a key account, a client, or more importantly, a family member?
This podcast is sponsored by MasterTalk, the most intuitive task manager on the web. MasterTalk is an easy-to-use project management tool. Makes it easy and fun and colorful to get all your projects managed in one place. As an entrepreneur, I use MasterTalk to help me manage all of my projects. I can drag and drop different tasks. I can assign key people to the task. I can set deadlines and schedules and enjoy just beautiful colors while I do that. So if you are interested in trying MasterTalk, go to meistertask.com/DMT tools. That's meistertask.com/DMT tools. And you can sign up for a free trial when you upgrade to the Pro plan. So get started for free today and invite your team members and get productive together. That's awesome. And so obviously, and I could see how, as you talk about these three pieces, I could see how they become a part of our daily lives, right? In terms of how we live. We have to meet people all the time, and we have to communicate, which is we have to communicate to our teams and so forth. Give me an example of how we can integrate some of these stuff that we practice into some of the things that we live our lives on a daily basis. So I'm an entrepreneur. I've got meetings on teams and partners and clients, and I would have just came out of a practice session with you or participated with you in a session. How can I integrate the stuff that I would have then learned or taken away from you into some of these things?
Great question about integration. So the way that I see this, Ricardo, keep things really, really simple, is once you learn one thing about your communication, it becomes a domino effect. I call it the multiplier effect of communication. So what does that mean? That means that as you get better at presentations, let's say in a coaching program, you automatically get better at presentations at work. So when I started working at IBM and I was leading many global implementations as an SAP consultant there, the reason I was a good presenter had nothing to do with IBM. It was because I presented really well outside of the boardroom, and I brought those techniques inside of the boardroom. So it's not really a matter of saying, let me take the random exercise and random word exercise and start doing it in between meetings. Not really, because you might scare your executives, but rather going, if I practice the random word exercise 50, 75, 100 times, well, the confidence they'll have in my next meeting will be much higher because I've done the harder thing. So that's the way I see integration. And the other piece as well is every time you learn something new, it automatically gets applied. So the next piece is question drills. Let's say we do question drills in a program setting where I'm drilling you on different parts of the business. When you go and talk to investors, that investor meeting seems really easy because I'm way harder than any investor you could ever deal with because I'm asking you a bunch of hard questions. We're 8 people on you, and the only goal is to tear you apart fairly, simply. So when you go back into your investor meeting, you feel like that investor meeting is a joke. So I think that's the purpose. It's always do the harder thing outside of the boardroom because the boardroom isn't going to help you. The boardroom is stressful. Your presentations are changing all the time. The expectations are really high, and it's always tied to a punishment. It's not fun. Get really good outside of the boardroom, and then the skills will start integrating on its own without you even realizing it.
Cool. That's awesome. And so if listeners who are interested in this tool, in utilizing this, connecting, how should they go about it? What should we need to do to then get access to you, get access to your tool and your programs?
Yeah, absolutely, Ben. So there's 2 easy ways to gain access. The easiest one is the YouTube channel. So if you just type MasterTalk in one word, you'll have access to all of our free content library and videos that we post on communication. And if you're interested in coaching, more specifically free coaching, I would encourage you to sign up for one of our upcoming free trainings. And all you have to do for that is go to rockstarcommunicator.com and you can register for one of our live free trainings.
Awesome. So MasterTalk or Rockstar, MasterTalk on YouTube or rockstarcommunications.com to sign up for free training, right?
Yeah, Rockstar Communicator. Yeah.
Well, rockstarcommunicator.com. Awesome. Yeah. Awesome. I know staying in business for years is not easy, and we're always interested in understanding how you have done it, and what would you say has been the best thing that has happened to you?
Absolutely. Thanks. Great question. I would say for me, it's how do you deliver value that no one else in the marketplace is delivering? That's how you get results. That's how you acquire customers at almost $0 because people are always talking about you to other people. Whereas if you sell average products, you'll get average results. Alex Hormozi talks about that $100 million offers. He's one of my mentors, and I absolutely love his work. And the key here, and I'll give you guys tips on how to do this. My mentor told me this. There's 3 ways to change a human being's life in a substantial way. Number 1 is change their wealth, make them richer financially or in other areas of life. Number 2, change their health, make them healthier, have them lose weight, adopt a healthier lifestyle, work out more. Or number 3, change the lives of their children. So wealth, health, children. Start to think about how can your products or service change one of 3, or ideally all 3 of those areas, and the human beings that you change their life for will be forever indebted to you. So whenever we thought about our business and what we were doing for executive clients, one of the strategies we implemented that's very hard to replicate is we made a decision to coach our executives as kids too. So why do we make the decision to do that? So we take our top 10 clients. It's an invite only program where only if you're in the program, you're in the ecosystem, we also coach your kids. If you're outside the ecosystem, you can't get into that kids program. So let's say one of my clients right now is a big CEO in Chicago for a BPO firm. And she wanted to join my executives program. She's doing really well in it. But the way that we actually changed her life, even if she got better, obviously, through the program, was we coach her 6-year-old son too. So what happens is we create a unique relationship with the client where now we know her family, not just her, the individual, versus other vendors who just know her. I know her husband, I know her kids, I know all of them, and they all know me. So because of that, when I ask for referrals, it's not saying, oh, Ricardo, you do great work. Here's some referrals. It's, Brenden, why didn't you come to me sooner? Here are the names. Here are the people you need to talk to. I will personally call them for you because they're family, right? And when they're family, business growth works out on its own.
Fantastic. Now that's awesome. That's amazing. And is there anything that I didn't ask you that you'd love to share with us today, Brenden?
That's an interesting question. I would say, well, you didn't ask me what my favorite book is, so I'm happy to talk about that.
Well, I'll get there because that's my question that I didn't ask you, but we'll get there. Anything other than that?
Yeah, I would say one question I don't get a lot is, what is the life philosophy that has made you successful at such a young age that we can learn from?
And what's the answer? What's your answer to that?
Find out next time. No, I'm kidding. So the answer to that question is, this is a philosophy I've always lived my life by, Ricardo, which is the following: be insane or be the same. If you want to be like everyone else, that's totally fine. But if you made it this far into this podcast episode and you're still listening to what me and Ricardo are talking about, you're probably curious. You're probably hungry for more. And for you, the only advice that really matters at the end of the day is to be insane. Don't you find it odd that a 22-year-old kid started a YouTube channel, not on pranks or on music videos or on skits, but he started a YouTube channel on executive communication tips. And then he went on to coach executives, but he still lives in his mother's basement. He doesn't really drive cars. He dances alone for an hour a day. He can karaoke in 8 different languages, and he absolutely loves Justin Bieber. How does any of this make any sense at all, Ricardo? And that, my friend, is the point. When every decision in your life makes sense to the only person that matters, which is you, you'll probably become extremely successful in life.
Awesome. That's insane. And that's the point. That's insane. Now I like to ask, because we got to get to the source of some of where you get this kind of stuff from. This is good stuff. What kind of books do you read or have read that has really spoken to you that you can recommend that our listeners read? I also want to talk about podcasts that you listen to as well, because we like to follow the trails of success, and so we'd love to be able to hear those.
Of course. So I'll keep it super simple. I'll give you one book and one podcast, because I know if I give more, no one's going to follow up or do anything. So the one book, the most important book that I've read, and it's so important that I have 2 copies of the book to remind me that it's twice as more important as any other book I've read, is a book called Thirst by Scott Harrison. Scott Harrison is the CEO of Charity Water. It's a nonprofit he started to help the world gain access to clean water. And the reason why Scott has made such a big impact in my life is because of how difficult his journey was. He started as a nightclub promoter in his 20s in New York City, and then went on to build one of the biggest nonprofits in the world that was newly formed. I think he's raised around $300 million now, and he's based in New York City. And there's a quote in the book that I'll never forget for the rest of my life. The quote is, "The goal is not to live forever, but rather create something that will." When I heard that quote when I was 20 years old, I said, what is the one thing that I can create forever? How can I skip all of these nightclubs and all that stuff? How could I get straight to the success? And Scott has been pivotal to that. And on the topic of podcasts, I would say I listen to a bunch of podcasts, but my number one is for sure Lewis Howes's School of Greatness. I'm a huge fan of Lewis's work. I've been listening to his podcast since I was 19 or 20 years old, and it is one of the few reasons why I've been able to accumulate so much knowledge in such a short period of time. And I would encourage all of you to listen to the episode he did with Scott Harrison. I think it'll really change the way you look at the world, and also the way that Scott approaches his nonprofit like a business.
That's awesome. We're always looking for creators and master users, Brenden, that have similar experience, that are able to create tools or systems to help other businesses grow, and you've used it to grow. We would like to have maybe 1 or 2 recommendations of who should be the next guest that we should be bringing on this podcast to talk about this.
Yeah, for sure, man. I mean, if you can get access to him, definitely Scott Harrison is an absolute genius in what he's done in the philanthropic space. He's probably the guest that comes to mind. The other one is Seth Godin. Two people I don't have access to, but probably the people you want on your show.
Awesome. Well, we'll definitely would love to. And shout out to Seth, because he's one of the folks that we follow a lot. We'll certainly see if we can get Seth or Steven on the show. But awesome, man. This has been incredible. I appreciate you stopping by, hanging out with me today. And definitely won't be the last. We would love to check in and see how MasterTalk is doing. It's funny, I remember when we talked earlier, I was telling you that MasterTalk is one of our sponsor, and here you are with MasterTalk. And don't mistake it, folks. One is helping you how to get work done, and one is helping you how to communicate the work you need to get done, right? So that's pretty amazing. But thank you, Brenden. I appreciate you, brother, and we'll definitely talk soon.
Sounds good, man. Thanks for your time.
That was Brenden Kumarasamy with MasterTalk, and he's delivered some powerful nuggets for us. I hope you benefited as much as we did. Don't forget, folks, to let us know how we're doing, and let us know how these content has really benefited you. Subscribe to our show, leave us a rating, give us a review. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, folks, don't forget, choose a tool to help you rule your growth. We'll talk soon.